for sharing a wonderful morning tea. Councillors, we'll start back with our agenda on the hard copy, page 40. I apologise, I do need to resume standing orders. Could I have a move and a seconder, please? Councillor Murray, I thank you. Seconded by Councillor Varian, I thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Now we're back on track. Thank you, Noelene. We'll start with item ENV 10/19. It's review of the New South Wales Energy from Waste Policy Statement. Could I have a move and a seconder to deal with this item, please? Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mike Petrie, thank you. And I'll hand over to our CEO to present this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's pretty self-explanatory. What myself and Angus Witherby from Moree Plains Shire Council has discovered was that the good intention that the New South Wales government had through the EPA with their 2015 Energy from Waste policy statement, although well-intended, misses the mark. It couldn't be more out of date, and it couldn't have missed the mark by a greater margin if it had been attempted to be written that way, in my opinion. And the text in the council report explains why. Largely, it's because the policy is prescriptive versus outcome focused. And I'll accept any questions by exception.
Questions to our CEO to do with the report. Councillor Very, you're indicated.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With the recycling, I see we're recycling less and less all the time. I just don't know how this is going to affect this statement. I just noticed that we've gone from 3 bins down to 2 bins of recycling goods in the same period.
When you say we, you mean your household, Councillor?
My household and Paul's household, because I've got to empty the bins for Paul's back.
Yep.
So the 2 households, we've gone from 3 bins to 2 bins.
Thank you. Any other questions to the CEO to do with the report? Councillor Rogan, I apologise.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, to CE. Just, it seems that, I gather you must have gone through a lot of frustration with all this.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, I'm good at making understatements. So just wondering, it seems like it's just a never-ending circle, and are you going to achieve anything? Is it going to go anywhere? Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Tenterfield and Moree Plains Shire Council has forced their way onto the review panel for the Energy from Waste policy statement. Yep. Through meeting with the CEO of the EPA about 2 months ago in Sydney, just before the New South Wales Country Mayors meeting. And we've been given assurances in writing from Dr. Kar-Mee Tang, the waste policy advisor to the EPA, that both Mr. Witherby and myself will be on the steering committee for the Energy from Waste policy review. But Councillor Rogan, I've got my doubts. And I say this with the greatest respect to what the government's trying to do. I think largely, and it's not only to do with energy from waste, but particularly with water policy, the government's agenda's been hijacked by the vocal minority, not by the silent majority. I watched a show on the ABC one Sunday night about 3 weeks ago on the 20% of plastics that Australia sends to Indonesia, to a little village that's about 3 metres deep in plastics, and we've been doing it for 8 years. And at the same time, we've been heralding how great we are with recycling plastics. We're not. We're great at hiding plastics. And on page 43, number 7, it's probably the most relevant thing. Over the last 20 years, the average world's GDP, Australia represents only 1.47% of the average. Actually, that's not quite true. It was up till 2016. I don't know what the figures are after 2016. So from 1996 to 2016, Australia averaged only 1.47% of the world's GDP. So for us to come up with a policy that is effectively the dog, or the tail wagging the dog, the wider economy, of which we're a grain of sand in a bucket, is going to tell us what to do, not the other way around. And that's what's happening with e-waste. 41% of e-waste in the United States is illegally shipped to Nairobi in vans. And yet the American people that think that they're judiciously recycling the e-waste and giving themselves a pat on the back, there's 9-year-old kids taking the computers apart, getting radium all over them to get the gold and other valuables out of the computers in third world countries. Australia has been exporting plastics to many Southeastern Asian countries, plus Central Asian country, plus India. Almost all of those doors have been shut recently because as those countries evolve and their market economics change, they're getting rid of the bad economics and introducing more sustainable economic practices themselves. And having plastics piled up 3 metres high in villages with people paying $4 a day to sort the plastic bottles out isn't sustainable, because eventually the environmental costs will outweigh the small amount of income the villages are getting. So to have a policy that's prescriptive, that says thou shalt, on level 3 of the waste hierarchy, recycle plastics, is in this instance is thou shalt condone plastics being sent to a small village in Indonesia for 9-year-old kids to get paid $4 a day to sort and put rubbish in a different spot on the planet. What I'm saying is that you can't have a policy, any policy these days, that don't take in consideration macroeconomics, because we're such a small part of a global economy. It'd be like us coming up with a national policy to tell the Chinese or the Americans or the Russians what to do in the Pacific. It just wouldn't happen. And it's the same with our policy on waste management. The one-size-fits-all policy at a micro level doesn't work at a macroeconomic level. And until the government realises that their feel-good policies don't work internationally, we'll be doing the same thing. The industry will be forced, or the more grey areas of the industry won't be forced. They'll take opportunities to do things legally. And Councillor Forbes contacted me a couple of weeks ago to say that the Canadian government had a whole heap of shipping containers sent back to them from Indonesia about, Philippines, about 69. Yeah. The same things happened to a company illegally exporting plastics to somewhere from Brisbane about 2 weeks before that. We need a policy for energy from waste management that doesn't look at the industry through rose-coloured glasses, and the rose-coloured glasses are really thick. So in answer to your question, Bob, I haven't got much hope for New South Wales. I don't think our political masters have enough control over the bureaucracy in relation to the EPA in New South Wales, even though they've had yet another restructure. And the Mayor and myself, Mr. David Keenan, the CEO of Southern Downs Regional Council, and Mayor Tracy Doby are arranging to have a trip to Brisbane in about 4 or 5 weeks. I was speaking to Mr. Keenan yesterday to have a look at an energy from waste plant that the Queensland government actually paid the company to build a demonstration plant 15 minutes out of the centre of Brisbane. Because the EPA regulations in Queensland are largely outcome driven, meaning they give a list of specifications to any waste producing industry and say, you've got to colour in between the lines. If any colour goes outside the lines, we'll close you down. Go your hardest, but we'll check you, and we'll check you as and when we see fit, and you'll pay us to check you as and when we see fit. Where in New South Wales, because it's so prescriptive, the modern technologies that have been invented now in Central Europe and strangely enough, China, who's now leading the world with it, our policy actually says that we can't use best practice because they've got to be proven. So the Chinese government have raised the bar with energy from waste even higher than the Europeans, and they've got even more stricter environmental controls. Well, technically speaking, we can't even adopt the more stricter environmental controls because it hasn't been proven in Australia, and it can't be proven in Australia in New South Wales because our policy won't let it.
Any other,
Thank-
yeah,
thanks.
councillor Forbes, of course.
Yeah, just through to the CE. I was just curious to know, you visited that site in Western Australia, last year or the year before. Well, what sort of waste, is it the specific, what sort of waste they're allowed to burn in that particular facility, or couldn't they burn plastic, the whole lot?
They're largely doing municipal solid waste. I suspect the Western Australian government will have the same problem as the Victorian government, the New South Wales government, and the Queensland government are having. There's very little market for anything except hard plastics, and even the hard plastic markets are quite variable. What I suspect will happen in Western Australia will be that their plastic stockpiles will continue to grow, and there'll be pressure placed on the government to review their policies. The Koana, and I'm not sure whether that was pronounced right. Is it? The Koana plant is largely municipal solid waste, excluding sorted recyclables. It's 638 million. It'll produce 38 megawatts, and they've signed a contract with 20 or 21 councils for 20 years to supply the municipal solid waste. The whole waste to energy industry freely admits that eventually they will be made redundant. And they freely admit, and I spoke to 17 CEOs from 17 different companies about a month and a bit ago, they freely admit that eventually scale will improve and the circular economy will make their plants redundant. And they're supportive of it. But it won't happen in the next couple of decades because the whole world, because of even America, which has got very, very large scale, hasn't got the scale to change the rest of the globe unless it's done in concert. So it won't be until small scale improvements are made, which then grow and become larger scale, and it'll be an evolutionary, not a revolutionary change from removing energy from waste over the next 20 to 30 years, bearing in mind that our recycling program only started 25 years ago and it's actually gone backwards in the last 12 months. So in answering your question, Councillor Forbes, at the moment, the Western Australian authorities adopted a similar stance to the EPA in New South Wales, but there is so much solid waste in Perth that just level 4 waste, which is classified as able to have energy removed from it, there's so much of that there's enough to justify the plants on their own without even looking at level 3 waste, which is supposedly recyclables.
Any other questions to do with the report to SCE? Councillor Peters, yes?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just an observation, I was on the ABC News this morning in Victoria. One of the big recycling plants went broke and they've closed it down. They've got 240,000 tonnes worth of waste and they reckon most of it, well, pretty well all of it will go to landfill. They don't know what to do with it. It was on the news this morning.
Any questions to the CE to do with the report? Councillor Very, yes?
Back in the good old days.
Question or a comment? You can
Comment.
tell me a story.
Comment. Back in the 60s,
Come on. I'll allow it, councillor. Make it quick.
there was a lot of recycling done on the granite belt with fruit cases, packaging, etc. It was just uneconomic for any of the large growers to do that. It was all right for a mum and dad operation with one kid. Any bigger than that, you just could not do it. It was the cost of recycling, the end product was inferior. So it was just a no-win situation. I see this recycling here is exactly the same boat. Unless you've got the top product, and that's what's happening now, you just can't recycle. I think that'd be a fair comment, wouldn't it, Ms. CE?
Through Mr. Mayor, The problem is the distance from the markets, not the incapacity to recycle. If all the plastics were in the one spot in an industrial estate somewhere in a major capital city, and you took them from number 10 to number 12, it wouldn't be an issue. The trouble is, if the American authorities are having difficulties with their plastic market, and they've got stockpiles even in New York City, which is, I think, it's got a population of about 18 million. If New York is having difficulty with scale, which is 2/3 of the population of our whole country, how is Australia going to artificially gain a scale when our country's population is so sparse outside of the major metropolitan areas? And the answer to that is obvious. It's no, we won't be able to.
Thank you, Mr. Seer. Other questions, councillors? Just in a wrap up before we vote on this adopting the policy, councillors, I commend our CE. He has led and driven not only this council, but in the whole state. He's acknowledged as doing all this work to do with waste to energy. We have lacked a champion in government, big time, especially with our state government. We have been disappointed about that. We have presented everywhere as we can. Terry always says to me, you know, he does the technical stuff. I just do the fluffy stuff where we go. I don't know a lot about this, but we've all learned as we've gone, and as we're going along, and our CE has led this council, and we've been supporting of our drive to secure waste to energy to help us with our waste problems, and not only us, but our whole region. We talk about it at the JO meetings. We talk about it at the country mayors. Talk about every politician that's willing to listen. To share with the council, and Donna will make a good story of this later, not now, of our meeting we're going to have with Southern Downs to go and visit that site in Brisbane. It looks doable for about $10 million, Councillor Rogan. And I can share with you that we'll be looking somewhere on the border, and it'd be, and this is all a pipe dream, but it's not, it's doable. The mutton works site at Wollongara, to us, it seems a great site. We've been told by the owners of that it will never be open again as a mutton works, somewhere like that, because there's more chance of getting some of this up in Queensland at the moment than there is in New South Wales. Ticks a lot of boxes. Southern Downs are fully supportive. We got a long way to go. Our cross-border commissioner is very interested. There is funding there to get something like that going at the moment. They have $12 million to look for projects to support, and it'd tick a lot of boxes and gain a bit of employment out there. Long way down the track, but that's where we're heading right at the moment, and we hope we get there. So we won't shift until we see something done. So as Mayor, fully supporting him. Thank our CE and his help from Angus at Moree with all the work that they've been doing in recent times. Councillors, the recommendations, they're all supporting of the recommendation. Favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. CE. Page 47 in the hard copy, councillors. Item ENV 11/19, it's Mount Lindsay Road Waste Collection Service. Jeez, we're into it today. And I do welcome our technical projects engineer, Melissa Bloom. Welcome, Melissa. And to help present this report. Can I have a move in a second to deal with this report, please? Councillor Murray, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Michael Petrie. And I thank you. Fiona, you both going to present this, or Melissa, whichever. Mel, you must be all over this because I see you brought no paperwork, no documentation, so you're all over this. Good to see.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor. This report is to provide council with some further information to aid the making of a decision on whether to continue the Mount Lindsay Road waste collection, specifically between Bunnabanoo Landfill and Urbanville, and it includes the townships of Liston and Legume. The officer's recommendation is three options: that it continues the Mount Lindsay waste collection service, whether the service will be mandatory. If others on the road would wish to use the service, then they would have to take their bins to Mount Lindsay Road itself. Option number 2 is to discontinue the service, where the service won't be available for anybody along the Mount Lindsay Road, and discontinued for the 2 villages as well. Number 3 is an opt-in waste collection service, which basically is business as usual.
Thank you, Fiona. Questions, councillors, to the report? Councillor Sawyer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As Jeff said in his address to us, we try and please everybody is going to be very, very difficult. So I'm looking for some clarification before I make up my mind which way to proceed. Under option 3, how difficult is it for us to do the opt-in, opt-out and only charge those that are actually using it, and those that have voted no and don't want it cease paying it? How difficult is it, and what's the impost to council if we do option 3?
Thank you, councillor. Paul will answer that question. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, and thanks for the question, councillor. So under option 3, which is an opt-in model which has been in place for the last 2 years on the trial period, the additional income that council has generated through that opt-in mechanism is about $35,198, and an estimate of the incremental cost of providing that service is in the vicinity of 27,000 or thereabouts. So that's what we're talking about in terms of revenue and cost. So currently, the people who haven't opted into the system, we're not charging them for the waste collection. So there's no additional, there's no change there. If the status quo has remained, no change at all there. So I'll just make those points. I'll just make one other point, is lies, damn lies and statistics. And one of the things to note is that probably not included in this report is there's about 37 people who didn't respond to the survey who are currently paying for the service.
Yep.
So just to not make you aware.
Thank you for telling us that, Paul. Councillor, does that, I'm sorry, Mel, I'll just go to Councillor Sawyer. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I believe so, Mr Mayor. Like, when this whole thing started, the survey was a debacle. That's
Totally
why
agree.
I
Yep.
stressed that the one we're going to start for Brian's Gap, start on the right wavelength.
Yep.
So we deal with that.
Yep.
Even if you say it's 50-50, you're going to upset half the crowd with whichever way we go.
Yep.
Option 3 gives us the ability to at least keep most people happy. There's always going to be someone unhappy.
Yep.
But if we go with option 3, those that want it pay for it. Those that don't want it don't pay for it, and we just get on with business.
Yep. Mel, did you have comment? Yes.
And just on that, the biggest issue with opt-in, opt-out is people still want the service but don't want to pay for it. And so in the past, we've put stickers on the bins to identify those who have paid and those who haven't. The issue with that is our truck drivers really can't see that. So it's very difficult from an operational point of view, even though, yes, the finance side is easy, to actually make sure that the people who are paying for the service are the only ones using the service. And that is a broader issue we do have. We do audits when we can. They take up quite a bit of time, but there is more chance that people will abuse the service and it won't be picked up until we do an audit, which is typically only every couple of years. So that's a risk.
Just for some clarity there, Mel. So for the ones who've been a bit mucky cunning and just dragging a bit out, they've purchased that bin on their own and they're not on the list, but they're just hopping on the goodwill chain there.
I'm not saying specifically on the Mount
Yeah,
Lindsay
no.
run, but yes, that has happened.
Yeah, yeah.
People buy bins from Bunnings. So
Yeah. Yep.
all the bins look very similar. We
Yep.
do have a stamp and a serial number on ours, but again, the waste operators, as
Yep.
they're picking up, it's very difficult to see.
Yeah, and it
that.
makes it hard for them. That's a really good
Yeah,
point.
so obvious ones where, it's a different colour, you can clearly say, yep, that's not our bin.
Yep.
But otherwise, if it's a green bin,
Yep.
it's very difficult to tell.
Councillor McNish, I'll come to you, Councillor Very.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Sawyer said. I prefer option 3.
Yep.
Perhaps I'd like to see perhaps for another 2-year trial. That means you can, after 2 years, perhaps do another survey. As far as the stick, that's my question. My next question was going to be, which Mel actually answered, is about the dodgy people. But surely if the sticker on top was big enough and the truck driver drives up to it, he or she could see it. If you put something about that big, it's going to be a bit small. But if you've got something about that size, and each person who opts in is the only one who gets one of those, it should not be too hard, I would not think.
It's not just that, because the operators see through a camera when they're picking it up. So it depends on the placement of it. That can be sorted out. But then it's every year you'd have to reissue the stickers to make sure it's current. So it is doable, but it's just a suggestion I had made was maybe we make it a different colour bin that is very difficult to buy outside rather than a sticker to make it very, very clear that that is it. But then the flip side of that is I know the visual amenity of the bins has been discussed in the past. So having, say, a bright pink bin potentially wouldn't make the community very happy either. It would have to be further discussed with the operators what's going to be the best way to manage that, because then there's the admin around that as well, making sure the list is updated and people actually put the sticker on their bin. We've had it the first time the stickers were issued that the people didn't get their stickers before the bins were collected. So then they had to call up council again and say, you took my bin away, I've just got my sticker this week. You know, the postal service out there isn't great.
What about a different coloured lid?
Coloured lids is a difficult issue because the EPA actually regulates what colour lids you have to have. They do. It sounds absurd. We report on it every year. They are pushing the 3 lid system, so yellow for recycling, red for general waste, and then green for green waste, which we don't have. So whilst the EPA are stipulating that we have to move to red lidded bins.
Have we got much evidence of people actually rorting the system up there, Mel?
I don't have those numbers off the top
But
of my head.
there is evidence.
There
of it,
has
is
been
there?
evidence. But like I said, it's not just restricted to that line. We get people trying to rot the system anywhere we are.
Right across the Shire, Bill. Yeah.
Just the nature of that route would make it easier to be able to potentially rot the
Yeah,
system.
that's right.
Councillor Verry, you've indicated?
Yes, a couple of questions.
Yep, I'll allow a couple.
The Amosfield pickup up along Amosfield Road and along the River Tree Road, at present the truck doesn't go there. But to answer one of Jeff's questions, there's about 24 residents on that Amosfield Road, could be even more. So seeing they don't go there, they bring the bins to the thing. I just wondering why that was included in the survey, those areas.
Yeah, it's always a difficult one trying to capture the right people in the survey. A lot of those people have opted into the bin service, so is their voice not as relevant to the people who are actually in the zone? They are still impacted by the decision being made. So it's also very difficult to try and narrow down the relevant properties because the combined rating, so they might have 6 properties and only 1 faces it, but the assessment number covers all of those properties. So it's there's always technical difficulties with the survey.
The other was there's that 30 or something percent that get the bin, but they're not included in the survey because they didn't answer the question. That'll bring it up to about 60% in favour of the survey. In favour of the bins, that'd be right? Close enough?
It was very clear in the survey that a non-response was not going to be counted either for or against. So their decision not to respond is their decision. We've reported that they haven't responded. I'm not sure how it would be fair to then include it in the survey. We'd be guessing what they want.
Fair enough. And the other question was, or comment actually, is 2 people have died that were in the no area since then. So that'd be, it's very close to, what I was getting at there, it's extremely close to 50-50. And I'm in favour of what Councillor McNeish had just said. We should do another survey. Given the amount of recyclables that what we call recyclables now, we're not going to be able to recycle in 2 years' time. I think we'll only have a select plastics and jam tins and aluminium, and that'll be about it that can go in the bins. I think that's pretty close to the mark. I don't think there'll be bottles be allowed in the bins or anything like that.
Councillor Peters, you've indicated. You have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, why couldn't the bins for the people that opt in, why couldn't the bins be chipped? You can chip a dog and a cat and everything else. Why can't you chip a bin and pick it up in the truck on a computer? It's easy enough.
Fair question, Councillor.
That type of technology is in existence. It's very expensive, and not the chip, the reading facility.
Yeah. It'd have to be in the truck mill.
Yes,
somehow,
to be able to, as they're going along, to say, yes, this is a registered bin. I know our fleet operator has been looking into such technology, not so much the chip, but having a a more technical solution in the trucks for when they're picking up. But currently it's only early days looking at that, and currently the cost of having it versus the benefit isn't great, but it's an option we could investigate, certainly.
Police manager very well, if you've got an unregistered car or anything like that, they can pick you up extremely.
Fair call, councillor. But that, as Mel said, councillor, that technology, it's in its early stages and it will get better as it goes. There's possibly something down the track that the council could, once it gets affordable, the council could pursue. We wouldn't be the only council suffering from people being, as I say, monkey cunning and rotting the system with this bin pickup. So you raised a really good point. But as a good council does, we're trying to work our way through this and make it the best we can, for our staff. And it shouldn't be to, poor old Garbo that he's got to decide whether, Peter Petty's on or off or whatever. But anyway, any more questions to do with the report, councillors? Councillor Murray, yes? You indicated, Councillor Petrie. I'll come to you after, Councillor Murray.
Would you prefer to go first, Councillor?
No, I've called you, Councillor Murray. You can hug later.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is just a consideration.
Yep.
There is a problem with garbage, and it will continue and it will become more prevalent.
Yep.
So I'm going to suggest that we give them a free run for everybody. We'll dangle the carrot, give them a free run for 12 months, then do a survey, take all the bins back, or talk to the people again and let them decide.
Councillor, what all for? Yeah. What all? Yeah.
We will have to address it one way or another.
Yeah. So you're indicating an amendment to this recommendation?
Yes.
I'll come back to you with that. Councillor Michael Petrie.
I'm all in favour of virtually this number 3 here. I think eventually the truck drivers work out who's who and who's not. It wouldn't be that big a task for them. They should know where they're going, shouldn't they? And they should know where everything is. I think it's just a matter of you've got to look after the people who want it and they pay for it. If another one comes in, they want to pay for it. If they don't want it, don't pick their rubbish up.
Can I ask, and it's been supportive of what Councillor Mel or someone, without getting ever involved with operational matters, is it the same operator that does that run all the time? And I know people have holidays.
It's fairly consistent,
Yeah.
but we do have a pool of operators, and there has been occasions where, due to trucks breaking down, we've had to get an operator, and
Yeah.
that isn't very.
Do you know where I'm leaning to there? That people end up knowing who's who in the zoo.
They
And
typically do, but also if new bins come in and someone puts it in a different spot, there's a few other factors,
Yeah.
and the new truck drivers, which
Yeah.
is part of what the technology fleet are looking at, can help new operators.
Is there any other questions to do with the report? Just hang on, Councillor Forbes, you indicated. Yeah, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Very. Then I'll go to you, Councillor Murray, for your flagged an amendment. Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a follow-on from what Councillor Petrie was saying. Wouldn't the rates notices, identify who paid for, the bin service and, could have a checklist, an up-to-date checklist for each? I'm just suggesting, that rather than have some sophisticated,
Barcode or something.
barcode or anything like this, but just say, well, listen, this particular laser paid their rates, et cetera. I'll pick them up and pick them up. That's all.
You can do that, but also out there, as you're well aware, often it's not very well signposted who is who. So we have provided maps in the past, and they don't provide lot boundaries in real life. So while in theory, yes, we could do that and we can get them to tick off lists, the practicality of, is that actually that property? Sometimes the houses are a long way from the driveways and you do have yellow markers, sometimes you don't. Sometimes, they get burnt down as well, the markers, or vandalised. So in those cases, then how would we identify?
Yep.
So,
Must be an out-of-control bushfire, not allowed to burn, Mel. Councillor Very, you've got a question to do with the report?
Mel, weren't we obliged to provide those residents up at Dalman with a service when we closed the tip at Dalman?
no, we were not obliged to provide it. The option of this route actually came out from some of the consultations we had up in that area, mainly from the Dalman people, because their closest tip is either Liston or Legume.
Yep.
So we weren't obliged to provide it, no, but we wanted to give them a better option.
Yeah, and I commend you on that. It's been well received, actually. Okay, I will go to you, councillor Murray, and please, with a bit of wording, because I need to deal with your proposed amendment. You mentioned about free bins for 12 months. You're going to go along them lines? Serious, because I need to get a second on whether we go on with your amendment. Councillor?
Before we do that,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
The disposal of garbage at the moment on their properties, people's properties, is EPA likely to come in very hard on this?
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't think they've got the resources to look at individuals. They tend to go towards larger companies that are bigger polluters and easy targets such as council.
But if neighbour daubs on neighbour, precisely that, does that make a difference?
Look, I'd have to ask Mel that question.
So you,
In theory, as soon as someone dobs on someone else, they have to respond. Usually then they'll send someone out to investigate, and there's various revenue or ways to report issues. So if someone did dob them in, they would at least have a phone call and do some investigations around it. Yeah, but if they don't know about it, they're not going to randomly rock up to your house and knock on your door and ask to see your waste practices. So
we are becoming a police state, but not just quite yet.
Councillor, can we deal with your flagged amendment, please? Just with some wording?
Well, I'll outline it for you and then you
Okay.
can read it for me. What I'm saying here is we're running an education program. We're educating people to use the garbage cans,
Right.
the garbage bins.
Yep,
And I thought if you were to give them 12 months free,
yep.
we carry that.
So would it be fair to say that you're along this Mount Lindsay
Along
route?
this- yeah, this route.
That you're moving amendment that council do a trial over 12 months for free? Of picking up the bins?
Picking up the-
Okay, as simple as that?
It's as simple as that.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Amendment's lost due to lack of a seconder. Councillor? So we go back to the recommendation. Which part, councillor? I'll hear your you've got an amendment for that. Right, can you have that, please? Okay. I thought we'd just done it. Righto. So an amendment for number 3, continue with the opt-in waste collection service between Bunnamanoo Landfill and Ernville, as well as townships Williston and Legume, and business as usual. Okay. There's a word changing there, so it is an amendment, councillor Verry. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McNish, you're seconding? Okay. Councillor Verry, I'll go to you and present your amendment. Speak on your amendment, I'm sorry.
Yeah, with the waste
Order, please, councillors.
with the waste industry changing, the recycling industry disappearing fast, I think it's very important to give these people another option. They can opt in any time up till 2 years' time, and then I think we should have another review and see how it is on that basis. Normally I would have supported Councillor Murray's, but I think it's too late. I think there's too much of a divided opinion there at the moment to do that. I don't think it'd achieve anything unless you had it on a 2-year basis and people would forget all about it. And I think that'd be too costly on council to offer a free service for 2 years. I think this way we're more or less doing that at any rate. So that's my amendment at any rate.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor McNish being the seconder, do you want to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, just to follow up on what Councillor Verry said, Mr Mayor, just listen to the gentleman this morning where it was 49-51. It's fairly close there. And this amendment should keep both sides happy. And in 2 years' time, the next council can look at it again and perhaps I'll make their decision then.
Yep. I'll take those, obviously, speakers for the amendment. Speakers against the amendment? Okay, I'll put the amendment. All in favour of the amendment? Oh, apologise. Councillor, did you want some closing comment? Yeah,
Yes.
never miss an opportunity.
No, never. No, there's been plenty of support for the thing for the elderly. We're all getting older. Also, there's need for people that actually go to work. They need that service. They haven't got time to run to the tips, they tell me. And the other one is the elderly that have, I don't know if the term's medical waste, but bandages and that type of thing, got to be thrown into the bin occasionally. And babies.
They're there. Yeah, apparently. Big breeding area up there, councillor. Okay. Councillors, be aware that there's been an adjustment, which is an amendment to number 3. We are voting on the amendment. All in favour of the amendment? Against? Amendment now becomes the recommendation. So it's number 3. All in favour of the recommendation? Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Just to finish on that, councillors, one thing this council has been good at is getting on with the job. And it's something I do commend you on. This hasn't been easy. I do fully understand and support Councillor Sawyer's comments about where we started off with this and it wasn't done so well. And that's what we need to improve on right across the board. So, and that's not having to go at our staff. That's just the lay of the land there, I think. And thank you, Mel, for all the work that you're putting up there. Okay. Councillor, sorry, you did have some there, but we needed to get on with that. It wasn't any earth-shattering stuff.
Shattering, Mr Mayor, I was just going to try and include Councillor McNish's bit about getting a sticker, a fair size sticker on top of the bin.
Yep.
Just as a safety valve to stop people ripping it off.
I'm sure the staff have noted that, councillor, and we'll move on there. Okay, councillor, move on to page 58. It's item ENV 12/19, the Bunnamanoo landfill hydrology study. Can I have a move in a second to deal with this, please? Councillor Very, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Rogan, and I thank you. And once again, while we've got you, Mel, I'll hand over to you to present this report.
So in summary, the purpose of this report is to provide council with information about the hydrology study of cell 5 of the Bunnamanoo landfill. I'm not sure if who was around back when it was dug, but we hit water when we dug the cell. It was assumed at that time that it was a spring, which was never actually confirmed. So now we have it confirmed. So then from here, we'll be taking it to with council's permission, we'll be taking it to the EPA along with the next council report to find out if we're able to start using that cell to put our new waste in instead of clearing land and building a new one.
Questions to Mel to deal with the report, Councillor Rogan, then I'll go to you, Councillor Murray.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I read this thing in detail and it seems to me that they're talking about this small aquifer that's just underneath that hole they've dug for the cell.
Yep.
And in their report, like the report doesn't seem conclusive. It says it may intrude into the thing. So at the end, it's back to council, I assume. So I'm asking the question, it's back to council in conjunction with the EPA to decide what you're going to do. So, but option 2, was it? The other one, which was opening in the other old cells, that didn't really get much of a mention here. So was that just put in there for padding or something, or was that a real option at one stage?
Okay, so there's 2 reports here. This one is just the hydrology study, looking at
I've
the
read
water
the
in
other
it.
one too, yeah.
So that the hydrology study itself doesn't consider the other options because there was no water found. There was no perched aquifer found anywhere else. This was just to determine what was happening with this water. So it is a perched aquifer which can intrude on it, but the base level in high water conditions, so it can encroach on it. But with proper lining, we believe that it won't encroach into the cell, and the EPA will be happy with that solution. But the other options are best discussed in the REF report, which is separate from this one.
Yeah. So my real question is, when council goes to the EPA, are they going to make a solid recommendation to EPA what council wants to do and see if EPA knocks that back, or are they going to go to the EPA and say, tell us what you recommend?
We will be
Because-
putting to them forward our preferred option.
Which would be to use the cell, is that right?
Yeah, because it's already dug.
I just thought this report to us should have told us that, that's all, that you want to use the cell,
Yeah.
and so we know that. Thank you.
Like I said, that's our preferred option, but it might not be council's preferred option, which is, like I said, the next report.
Councillor Murray, you've indicated a question to the report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just a two question here.
Yes, I'll allow two.
How long before you can open a cell? An old cell? How long approximately? Yes.
If
Or
you're,
can you?
that's a question. We don't know if the EPA will allow us to open an old cell. There was the belief at the time that we could just continue building on top of it, happy days. But the guidelines around opening a cell on top of a cell, we have to treat it as if it's a new cell. So we have to line it properly, which is still quite costly. So if the EPA give us approval, we could get it lined and running relatively quickly compared to digging a new cell. So opening an old cell is quicker than digging a new cell if the EPA approves it. But that's where we don't know if the EPA will or won't approve. So we need a range of options to provide to them, so we have backup and not caught on the back foot with them.
The other question, councillor, yeah?
And my other question was, that cell that floods, isn't there a creek running
Yeah, yeah.
over that? So
Microphone, councillor, please. Microphone.
Oh,
Yep,
Your time ran out.
that's all good. Repeat your question, councillor.
I'm asking, is there a creek? There is a creek running.
Basket Swamp.
Basket Swamp.
Yeah, both.
Is it dismal? Okay.
The
So
creek
does
is
that
downstream. The
Does
creek
that
is,
impede upon with the EPA? Does that not impede? I
and
mean, it's right.
it's
very close.
downstream of it, so we have an intense monitoring program
Yep.
to make sure that we're not releasing any leachate. We're not impacting the stream downstream, so we already monitor that. And we will have to continue monitoring that regardless of what we do. The problem is we don't have anywhere else to take it. If they told us we had to close down Bundaberg landfill, we don't have anywhere else to go. So we're trying to get, I think our reviews have shown we have about 50 years of life left at that site. We'd prefer to expend that, and hopefully by then we've moved technologically along, but in the interim I'll have to find somewhere else. So it's what we've got. It's not ideal, but the EPA have let us, with our monitoring, operate that site and should continue to do that in the future.
Thank you. I'm enlightened.
Good. Any other questions to do with the report, councillors? Okay, the report's there, councillors. To receive a note, all happy to receive a note? All in favour? Against? Carried? Thank you. Now we move on to the report. To do with the Bundaberg landfill review of the environmental factors. Item ENV 13/19. Could I have a move in a second here, please? Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Michael Petrie, and I thank you. And once again, I'll hand over to you, Mel.
So this is the part 2 report, which is, we looked at 3 options, one which is the cell, using cell 5, one was reopening an existing cell, and one was continuing with the master plan to see what our environmental impacts are for those 3 options, as well as the full landfill footprint we're proposing over the 50 years. And this is to take to the EPA to say, these are the options we have, and with this conjunction with the hydrology study, we can put forward then our preferred option to see if they're happy with that. But then we have 2 backup options of, well, if you don't like this one, what about this one and this one? We've done all the work behind that to be able to make an informed decision. So from an operational point of view, if the EPA let us use cell 5, that's our best option. It has the least removal of vegetation. It's already dug, and we just would have to line it. So it should be able to get it up and running the quickest as well.
That's cell 5, Mel. Okay. So out of what council's voting on now, and I apologise because the report is in some detail, you're asking for a recommendation here, or we're just agreeing with the 3 dot points, and it'll be, that decision will be made through working with the EPA.
Yeah, so the purpose of this is to let you guys know what that this is the studies we've done. We need your approval to take these two reports to the EPA to work with them to
Yep.
come up with this
Yep.
next stage for our landfill.
And the other question I did have, Mel, so with, say that cell 5, and I'll jump back to page 16, hard copy, those photos there of the, in figure 4, cell 5 as of November 2014, as we speak today, that's what we're looking at, still dry. So regardless, that will be lined? That's just a standard procedure? Okay,
We have to meet the
Yep.
the guidelines
Yep.
of construction cells,
Yep.
so that has to be lined
Yep.
both with probably a clay and then a
Yep.
geotextile.
all good, thank you. Questions to Mel to deal with this report, councillors? Councillor Peters, yes? I'll accept it, councillor.
This is going on as long as I've been on.
He, I was waiting for you,
Yeah,
councillor.
well, it's just ridiculous. We had the EPA bloke up here.
Yep.
And we looked at buying some land out in the western side to
Yep.
put the dump out there, right? And he said, if you bought the land today, it'd take us 5 years to get it licensed. Now, that's bureaucracy for you.
Wouldn't,
You know, it's just ridiculous. The landfill site that we're using now in Bundaberg is in the worst place in
Yep.
the Shire. It's in the highest rainfall area.
Yep.
Why the hell was ever put there?
Yep.
I had nothing to do with that. I wasn't on council then, fortunately.
I thought you were, but anyway.
No, I wasn't.
Thanks for declaring your interest, councillors.
Anyway, that's it.
Councillor, I will take a minute. I fully support everything you've said in the long journey we have as a council gone through with this. Absolutely, the fact that EPA even approved the bloody thing out there, I mean, God. Anyway, swamp was the big alarm to me. But anyway, and it's nothing to do with the current staff we have. They've been dealt these cards, and I commend them on the effort that they've made with dealing with a very difficult situation. It hasn't been good. But, and it's a conversation I happily have with the EPA. Well, we were here, sitting here with two consultants. One came to tell us that's the go, we're all going out to a swamp. Then the other one turns up about a month later telling us with a bit of work, there was 20 years left in the sunny side. We just voted on it and cost this community a bloody fortune. And we're only going on the advice from the EPA. They rode into town on the white horse. It's all good. So, okay. So I'm sorry, I just get so cranky about it. But anyway, no, can't. Any other questions, councillors, to Mel to deal with the report? The report's there in front of you. All in favour? Against? Carried. And Councillor Forbes didn't indicate to me he'd be getting a phone call to be going, so he hasn't left, councillors. He's just gone for a minute. Okay, so that's that one. Correct me if I'm wrong, are we on page 80? Yep.
77.
Apologise. Thank you. 77. Item GOV 39/19, it's a monthly operational report. Can I move in a second that we deal with this, please? Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second, Councillor Petrie, and I thank you. And I'll hand over to our CE to present our monthly operational report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're sitting at 83. There's been a few slight changes. Basically, it's in the last month, council staff in particular in the operations areas has concentrated on reconciling all the grant funds that were required to be spent by the 30th of June. And I'll take questions by exception, but I'd ask our acting Director of Infrastructure to comment on, in particular, on the jobs that the staff have knocked over in the last 4 weeks to reconcile those.
Thank you, Mr. CE.
Terry, through the mayor. We have just recently, just in the last couple of days, we finished the White Swamp Road Bridge, the replacement out there. You caught me on a bit of a...
Mate, you'll get there. Take your time.
So we've been working on a lot of the drought funding, which was the heavy vehicle access program, which helped us on Plain Station Road, coupled together with NDRRA funding. We spent about 6 weeks out there widening and sealing that and fixing the butters out there. We've spent New South Wales funding on Amosfield Road on the reconstruction of 1.54 kilometres of sealed road out there. That's been widened to 9 metres. Quite a bit of still the flood damage money from the March 17 floods, which is a bit ironic given that we're in drought at the moment. But we've been working at Sawyers Gully, expending those funds, putting a new causeway out at Sawyers Gully. We are currently working at the Woodenbong culvert on Mount Lindsay Road. So that we've got a few extensions that we're working on to finish off that work. I'm just trying to think which other ones we've got out there. Certainly a lot of bridges that we've been working on. Those in particular, we finished Castle Rag, we finished Back Creek Road, and we finished Black Swamp just in the last few weeks as well. So we've knocked quite a few of those bridges off, and we're boring along at getting the rest done.
Good news, Fiona. And from the community, I have had plenty of comments on the work that's been done out and around our shire and the quality of work that is done. So I do wish to pass it on to our staff. It's been good. Questions to either our CEO, Fiona, or whatever senior staff to do with the report? Councillor Sawyer, yes?
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO. Top of page 16 of the hard copy in relation to the water filtration. It says the initial EOI was successful, blah, blah, and it was announced it would fund 6.975 million towards the project. Council will need to proceed on the business case due April 2019. So that's a few months ago. Where are we up to on that?
Yeah, the business case has been done. We're currently negotiating with DI Water on the technical aspects of the water filtration plant. It's been very difficult to get everyone looking at the same dot on the horizon. There's a lot of technical experts involved, both with the design of the new water filtration plant, the DOIW's input into the emergency water augmentation, DOH, Department of Health, with their requirements. As of yesterday, I think it was yesterday, David Ward, who's been the project manager for the emergency water augmentation, met with DIW, DOH and NRA in Sydney. What's making the water filtration plant really difficult? The water filtration plant as it stands alone is actually not a very difficult thing to do. What the DOIW, David and others are trying to do is align the emergency water supply works, which are the value of about 3.2 to 3.6 million, we're not 100% sure yet, such that of the 3-point-something million dollars we spend on the emergency works, we can use some of the apparatus from that on the more permanent works. So it's been a little bit tricky because one phone call and you can get a complete plant turn up for the emergency work, put the dirty water and power in one end, clean water comes out the other end. But if we go and spend $1.6 million on a reverse osmosis plant that can't then be unplugged and plugged into the new water filtration plant, we've blown $1.6 million. So the technical art, if you like, and the frustration with everyone, because everyone's trying to do their best, and there was a press release I wrote for Janelle Saffin yesterday, which I understand they sent to Tenterfield Star yesterday. The DOIW had been working very, very well with council now. They were a bit rocky at the start because everyone had different ideas. But the trick or the requirement we've got now is to make sure any money we expend on the emergency works, unless absolutely necessary, isn't wasted and can't be then repurposed on the permanent works. The trouble being, and this is where it's getting really, really tricky, there's a thing called an integrated water catchment management cycle plan, or integrated, sometimes I get the names around back to front, but that's what it is. That normally takes some lengths of time, and that will determine what the permanent apparatus is required for the water filtration plant. And in layman's terms, that's what they call the business case. So it's not a business case as in the money business case that most people think. It's a business case as in the technical apparatus business case. The gear that's got to go in the building, in other words. The trouble is, we've got to have the emergency water situation sorted out by the 4th of January next year. If anything happens to Shirley Park, that's when we'll run out. So we're trying to do the review of a business case again, because we did one on the 4th of April, I think it was due in. We're trying to review the technical business case such that we can use the gear that we're going to use on the temporary works in the permanent plant, and we want to review that in about 5 minutes flat. What's made it another level of difficulty, or actually another 2 levels of difficulty, is that we've known since 1993, and we've managed it quite well, that we've got uranium and other heavy metals in the water, which the plant, and we got our second lot of test results back on Friday last week. The plant is taking out all the things that we're not allowed to have in the water as per the Australian Water Drinking Guidelines quite efficiently, actually, surprisingly enough. And we got a clear bill of health with that. That test takes 6 weeks. What we build with the new water filtration plant is reliant on a series of test results to tell us what's going to be in the water. We don't know what's in the water yet because we haven't drilled the bores. When we do the test bores, we've got a choice. We either wait 6 weeks and test the water for uranium. Actually, uranium only takes 2 weeks. There's another form of uranium that takes 6 weeks, and I forget the name of it, but it's got about 20 syllables in it. We either design a system with an ionizer in it that can take out everything and spend more money and don't wait 6 weeks, or we wait 6 weeks and design a system that's fit for purpose and maybe not have to spend the money. Or the third scenario would be wait 6 weeks, get the result and find out we should have spent the money and we've wasted 6 weeks. So that's the conundrum we're facing at the moment. The problem actually it's not a problem. In 1993, when the Shirley Park bore was put in, Public Works, which weren't called Public Works back then, but that's who they'd been for the last 100 years, designed the bore outlet quite strangely, I thought, until I found out the reason why. The reason there's a mushroom and the bore water comes out and gets aerated and then lands on the rocks and runs across into the dam is that it helps get rid of the carcinogens that's in the water before it goes through the filtration plant, because the 3 grades of uranium that we've got in the water have only got a half-life of 4 hours. So if it comes out the bore and goes down to the water and it takes more than 4 hours to get to the plant, there's nothing to take out when it gets to the plant in the first place. The new plant, we'd like to put the bore water directly into the plant instead of putting into the dam and shanding it, which also helps takes out molybdenum and the other 2 heavy metals in it. They basically sink to the bottom, and then every 20 years when you get a flood, you undo the valve and flush the bottom of the dam out down the creek. Or at least we can now. We wouldn't have been able to do it up to 2 years ago because the gate hadn't been open for 20 years and it was rusted shut. But when we did the dam wall work, we fixed all that. The idea is to drill the bores and pump the bore water directly into the plant to save evaporation rates on the dam. Now, if we pump the water directly into the plant, we won't have a 4-hour window or greater. It's probably closer to 4 days. Therefore, the new plant will have to mechanically or electrically take the radium and uranium out of the water, which means we'll either have to guess and spend the more money thinking that that's the case, guess and then find out we've got a retrofit because we've made a mistake, or guess, put it in and find out we were right and our guess was validated. The other challenge we got is DOH aren't real keen on us taking water from down near the sewage treatment works. It's my opinion they don't understand how the aquifers work, because the water from the sewage treatment works flows downstream, not upstream, and where we want to put the bore is more than 500 metres upstream. And the water that we'll be taking out, if we put a deep bore down there, is in a different strata layer than the water that's on the surface anyway. The third argument, and we might end up having to have this argument with DOH, is that a modern filtration system, you can take out whatever you want. The Sydney filtration system, for example, has to put minerals back in because it takes out so much stuff out of the salt water. There's not enough normal minerals that are contained in water to go through the system. So I have got absolutely no problem with drinking any water that's gone through a modern filtration system, because about the only thing it can't take out is, well, actually the new ones can take it out, but the ones up until recently, the only thing they couldn't take out was Prozac, which is why the fish are happy in the Thames. That's serious, by the way. That's not a joke. They can't take out antidepressants drugs apparently, or they didn't used to, but until recently. So yesterday I spoke to Gillian, who'd been out with Paul, who's a gentleman from Western Tasmania that's one of Australia's best hydrogeologists, and they've checked the site at behind Tenterfield Transport Museum. It's no good. They've checked the site down at Federation Park. It's no good. Yesterday they were going up to near the archery. Gillian added another site. The hydrogeologist thinks when they did the test bore on Apex Park in 1993, they made a mistake and they missed the mark, and there's three convergent crack failures that go very close to where the bore was at Apex Park, but not quite. So they're going to go and check that out today. I'm hoping that the hydrogeologists will have all the information to council by Friday. If they don't, we're going to have to extend the testing regime further afield, which is going to bump the costs up because of the rising main requirement and pumpage requirements to get to the dam. But 2 out of the 4 potential sites have failed. I would be extremely disappointed in the DOH if they don't take advice from DOIW on the filtration and also advice from a hydrogeologist and the exploration geologists on the status of the water that's upstream from the sewage treatment works. If water gets found there, it may be our only option. It will be more expensive than the Archery Club area or Apex Park, though. So, in answering your question, it's not really a business case. It's a technical business case. And I think I've just about explained everything.
Why you're there.
I think so. So I'll accept the executive summary on my next year.
Other question, councillor? Okay.
Longman's not here.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll accept that. I'll accept that, councillor.
Page 40, I don't find it time to ask questions. Page 45.
Microphone, councillor, please. You're
I
right.
was borrowing Tom's.
That's all right. Page 45,
Yeah,
councillor.
Sydney Weekender, we're going to send a film crew on the 11th of July. How'd that go?
Through Mr. Mayor, I haven't spoken to Caitlin about that. I don't know. I'll take that on notice.
Page 62, the FTE question that I asked many months ago to get included on that chart. I noticed that the FTE is now 108.35, exclusive of casuals. So it's made its way into the body of the report. Can we please have it on the chart at the front end, and I can't see it, page 4, where we've got the establishment chart. If we could have the FTEs across that is what I originally asked for.
Yeah, no problems, councillor Sawyer. We'll do that.
Thank you.
And for all of council, it's 109 point something as of yesterday.
That's good. It was accurate when the report went in. Page 66. It says that a manager of assets and program planning has now been appointed and is addressing outstanding program planning needs. On the establishment chart, it's still vacant.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the establishment chart's actually, it's been out of date. It was picked up yesterday, but it was too late. It's been out of date for about 4 months. And the new one will be out of date as from this morning, because we had a resignation this morning as well. So it's a matter of us just keeping the latest chart. Now, HR keep the charts, and sometimes they don't upload them into the system. So as of yesterday, the chart was right. As of today, it's wrong again. But yes, I'll put the latest chart in, councillor Sawyer.
Page timed out. Page 115, commercial or industrial works in May. I missed it on last month's report. $23,729,130. What was that?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd have a guess and say that was a solar farm. It was valued over 20 million because it had to go to the JRP.
Okay, very good. Managers' reports, it says in the report, that organisational report, that 2 managers per month present. We haven't had any report this month and last month. Have we stopped doing it?
That's, yeah, good question, councillor Sawyer. I can't really answer that. You've caught me on the back foot with that. I'll take that one on notice, and we'll try and get it back happening again, because it was a good thing.
Of course it is.
And to finish on a happy note, I had a few complaints from people about the poor line marking in the street, and I said, it's coming, it's there, and it's early, and everybody's happy. Thank you very much.
Good on you, councillor. Councillors, any other questions to our CE or our senior staff to deal with the operational report? No? Okay. All happy to receive and note the operational, the monthly report, councillors? Against? Carried. Councillors, move on to page 78. Item GOV 40/19, delegation for chief executive leave period, 28 July to 11th of August. Can I move in a second here, please? Councillor Peters, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Very, thank you. Self-explanatory, councillors, it's in our CEs in his time off after the nuptials on Saturday. Questions? None? All good? Happy to receive and note? Against? Carried. Page 80, GOV 41/19. It's the submissions and motions for the local government New South Wales annual conference. Move in a second here, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second by Councillor Rogan, thank you. So Sayed, did you want to present? The motions are there, councillors.
Look, I'll just make a comment on motion number 1. The Australian government has lent $64 billion for the HELP, which is the new HELP, higher education, used to be called a HEX. 18% of that is considered bad debt by the government, and all that information's on the Australian government website. It's not on Twitter or Facebook or any of those. This is straight off the official website. What I'm suggesting is that the public aren't getting anything for that 18%, and they're not getting much of a social dividend for the 64 billion. At least if they had a system where some of those people could work off their help debt in the bush, we get something for it. Thank you.
And councillors, and just to speak on the second motion, which we did, so we continue, we've took it to Alga, now we're taking it to the state government to do with the duty of care in the national parks and forestry. We have had a response, and later on next week we'll be doing a media release on that from the minister actually, and it's a fairly interesting response. So it is ongoing. So I just needed to share that with you. Any other questions, comment to do with that report, councillors? Reports there, I commend you on being supportive of those motions. All happy to receive and note? Against? Carried. Councillor, move on to page 85 to deal with our financials. Finance accounts and period ending 2nd of June. It's item GOV 42/19. Moving a second here, please. Councillor Very, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Peters, thank you. And I do welcome Penny Chisholm. Welcome, Penny. You've been sitting patiently in the wings. We've trotted you out to present these reports.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, this report shows the cash position of councillor as at 30 June 2019. The general bank account had $7,924,514.72 as at the 30th of June 19. And the trust fund had $313,266.50 as at 30 June. Investment shown in the attachment totaled $10,333,412.90. As per council's request to be advised on any water concessions granted each month, I can advise that none were granted in the month of June 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions to Pen to do with the report, councillors? No. The report's there to receive and note, councillors. All in favour? Again, carried. Thank you. Councillors, moving to page 89 in your hard copy. Item GOV 43/19. Capital expenditure report as of the 30th of June 2019. Moving a second here, please. So, Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Mike Petrie, thank you. Once again, over to you, Pen, to present that report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, this report lists the capital expenditure projects and their progress against budget as at 30 June 19. We are happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions to our officer? No? The report's there to receive and note, councillors. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Move on to page 91. It's item GOV 44/19, report on loan balances. Got move in a second here, please. Councillor Brian Murray, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Rogan, thank you. Once again, over to Penny Chisholm to present that report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, this report lists loan balances as at 30 June 2019. The report has been updated to reflect that council took out an additional loan as per council approval for $3.051 million during 18-19. We're happy to address any questions you have.
Questions to our officer to do with that report? It is a good report and goes back to a previous council, and it's always been good to keep up to date with that. Councillor Murray, you have a question?
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
Relevant. Is that unusual for commercial rates to be lower than T-Corp?
Paul will answer that question, councillor. Good question.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question. I can't really comment on whether, I believe it probably would be unusual, but I think given the low interest rates on offer at the moment and the competition that the banks are, for the dollar, I think that may be part of the reason why, but certainly the very low interest rates at the moment are contributing to that.
Any other questions to our officers to do with the report, councillors? No. The report's there to officer's recommendation. All in favour, councillors? Against? Carried. Councillors, move on to our reports from to do with committees and delegations and committees. First one's on page 95, councillors. It's item RC 14/19, report from the Parks and Gardens. Councillor Murray, being the chairperson of that, are you happy to move that way? Second, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Councillor Murray, did you want to speak to the report?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes. Just some clarification here.
Yep.
That it came up about the 350 bare-rooted trees.
Yep.
That was something I put into the budget to GM. And those trees could be interpreted as all going into the Western Car Park, which
Yep.
are not.
Okay.
That was for the entire Shire.
Yep.
That's what that was all about.
Yep. Questions to, as chairperson of the committee, to Councillor Murray or to our CE, Councillor McNish, yes?
Yeah, Councillor Murray, what do you mean by playground from Jubilee Park to be auctioned off?
I asked the same question this morning, councillor. We don't answer.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to auction the park off. I think
That's what I was wondering.
No. It's the old playground equipment, isn't it?
That's the play.
The CEO, councillor McNish, the CEO will comment on that, because I asked the same question in a briefing this morning.
Yeah, anything that we decommission, if we can see any value in it, we, instead of it sitting up in the depot over the next 20 years and getting thrown out in 20 years' time, we try and offload to somebody else for $1. For example, we're actually selling the old pavers in Rouse Street and getting good money for them, actually, in relation to the Strongest Country Communities Fund. So in years gone by, most of this stuff just usually ends up in council depots, but eventually it gets thrown out. You're better off getting money for it at the time and than harbouring stuff that's just going to take up room at the depot.
And we do that on online, councillor McNish, like Gumtree or whatever, and council's been pretty successful with selling a fair bit of stuff, actually. Except for bridges, we need to hold them.
No one wants to buy old.
Councillor Berry, you have a question? CE or through the chair of the meeting, councillor?
To the chair of the
Yeah,
meeting. Brian, with Councillor Murray, with the bare-rooted trees, have you got any contingency plans with them? I don't think you'll be able to plant them around this end of Tetterfield successfully this year. Have you got any contingency plans to plant them elsewhere?
Mocker.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Initially, it was designed that, what came from the committee, that we would distribute them equally around wherever required, particularly in the villages, the outlying villages. And but at this point in time, who knows where the route's going to go? So nothing can take place, I presume. They haven't been ordered, as far as I know. So it's just not a problem at the moment.
Waiting for the rain.
Yes, big time.
Any other questions to the chairperson? No? Councillor Murray, I do commend your committee for the good work. I know season's not great for parks and gardens, so trudging on. But there is a lot going on in that, so I do commend you on the committee the way that you're working there. The report's there. Councillors, all happy to receive a note? Against? Carried. Councillors, move on to page 100. Item RC 15/19, report from the Tourism Advisory Committee, the meeting held the 3rd of July. Councillor Rogan, being the chairperson, you happy to move along those lines?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder, please. Councillor Berry, take your seconder. Councillor Rogan, did you want to speak to your report?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. As everyone's probably aware, the Tourism Advisory Committee was only instigated late last year. And since then, it's spun its wheels a bit, spending some time trying to ascertain what the actual requirements of the committee would be, etc. What tourism potential there was in certain parts of the Shire and all that sort of stuff. Kyogle, about the same time, Kyogle Shire also indicated that they had an interest in along our shared boundary to the north, where tourism ideas might have a similar purpose between the two shires. So they instigated an initial meeting in Wollongong, which we all attended with council staff from Council Tourism. And since then, there's been other meetings ongoing. There's been a couple in Tenterfield. A group called Tilma, I think based from Toowoomba or somewhere, facilitated a workshop for both councils with a view to looking at the best way forward as far as trying to brand the northern part of the Shire, and whether that could include different type of branding for other parts of the Shire, and what tourism opportunities they could see for the Shire there. So that report from that group hasn't been forthcoming. At the last meeting, which is, the minutes are here for our last meeting, which was on the 3rd of July, the question was asked about whether that report was available or not. And we did receive a summary, which was stuff we already knew anyway. But no, it's not available yet. And as I had a conversation with Caitlin yesterday, and it still isn't available. The next meeting is on the 19th of August, and I'm promised that their Tilma Group's recommendations will be available to us by then. So where we're at the moment is we've already identified that mountain biking has potential as something that can be achieved in the Shire. And the idea is to have various venues dotted across the Shire, which would be a combination of private enterprise and groups working with state forest. So on public land as well as private land. So at the moment, there's 1, 2, 3 areas identified. 2 are private enterprise who are, one is currently has some mountain bike stuff developed in conjunction with national parks. National parks themselves can make up the 4th venue. Michael Lieberman from National Parks locally has indicated that he could probably give us 50 kilometres of established fire trails, and that's maintenance trails within Ball Rock and Bunabinu National Parks, with the ability to link those together. So as far as he's concerned, it's in the National Parks Management Plan already to accept mountain biking within those parks. We just have to assist each other with marketing in views of maps and all that sort of stuff. So the idea of mountain biking having it as a destination for the Shire is well on the way to taking place. CE come up with an idea which I agree with 100%, that when we do get this Tilma Group report and we look at marketing through Tenterfield Tourism, we market the area and include all the venues as one sort of thing to promote the Shire overall as a mountain bike venue. So that's where we're at. We've also requested from Tourism Committee members other ideas. Mr. Robinson spoke about some of those this morning with photography. I've already had an operator, tourism operator from Brisbane come down, spend a weekend with me and look around. He has a professional photographer who he can work with. So when winter's finished and he finishes up all the other tours he does over winter, which is out in the centre of Australia, we'd expect to see him down here, starting to put together some tours. So we have made some progress, and I believe we've got a lot to go. The last meeting was on the 3rd of July. The minutes are there. And so if you want to go through those and any questions, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rogan, for a detailed report. I do commend you also on the job you're doing as chairperson as that, and that I think that committee's got a big future, as we both know, and a diverse lot of people in there too, Bob. So it is, but I think they're working really good together. Any questions to do with the report, councillors? Councillor Berry, yes.
Not a comment, but just to add to what Councillor Rogan was saying, I've had 2 groups ask me about bike trails along the Mount Lindsay. One wanted council to put in a track beside the highway, which is, I said, that's impractical. And the other one wanted the Mount Lindsay sealed to Tenterfield, because what they do at the moment, they leave Stanthorpe or Warwick, ride down the Mount Lindsay, get to the edge of the bitumen and turn around and go back. But they wanted the thing, when they eventually get sealed, I'd go down to Tenterfield and do the same thing here. Come to Tenterfield and spend their money in Tenterfield, in other words.
Councillor Berry, we'll just continue on the path we are, and we've only got about 15 k's to go, and it's not undoable, but I know we'll get there, and we will see it in our lifetime. We'll have a party then. No, you'll see it. You'll see it, guarantee you. Okay, any other questions to do with the report, councillors? No? All happy to receive and note? Favour? Against? Carried. Last item, councillors, 124, on page 124. I apologise, Councillor Forbes. Yeah, good question, councillor. Was held while we're away, actually.
Through you, Mr Mayor, not as far as I know, but I'll take that on notice, councillor Forbes, if we've been.
Yeah, no, where were we at we were away at something.
Through you, Mr Mayor,
Yeah.
the minutes of that meeting have just been typed up. I believe they'll come to the next meeting.
Yeah, apologise, councillor, good question. Okay, now we'll go on to page 124. Item AES 6/19, council resolution registered for July 2019. Moving the seconder here, please. Councillor Very, thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Petrie, thank you. And I'll hand over to our CEO to present the council resolution register.
Through you, Mr Mayor, happy to take questions by exception.
Any questions, councillor McNish? Yes?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just at the bottom of page 27, DA or ENV 7/19. Has there been any comeback from that gentleman whose permission was refused to build his donga thing?
Sold.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, no, nothing to this stage. One of his neighbours bumped into me in the street reasonably shortly after the event and informed me that he'd purchased the block.
There you go. Any other questions, councillors, to do with the report to our CE? No? Reports that councillors all happy to receive and note? Against? Carried. Councillors, that we come to the end of our meeting. We didn't have any confidential. I apologise. We needed to speak about that. Councillors, what's going to happen? We are going to have lunch here. We have after we have lunch, is it Cardno? Development Service Plans Development here to do with the Development Service Plans and Development Contribution Plans. It's a training and information session for councillors. It's meant to be 2:30, but as soon as we have lunch, they're going to do it. That's something we did ask for, so that's...
How long will that go for, Peter?
Shouldn't take any longer than about an hour, John.
Okay. Well, I'll get Cattles to feed.
No, it's fine, but it is something we asked for. If we go back to that, well, it wasn't meant to be, but came across as a petition, so I did, and to commend our staff that this is what we've done. We asked for this. Okay, we're now at the end of our meeting. There was no more business, councillors. I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Just spend a minute, bring people up to date about the Liquor Accord meeting I attended last week.
Yeah. Put your microphone on, councillor. Yep. Yeah, councillor, happy to accept it.
Okay, so it's just that just a couple of things I thought you might like to be aware of, and I wasn't aware of this, but apparently within our Liquor Accord there is an Ask for Angela campaign. Now, when there's roses, well, what the hell is this Ask for Angela campaign? And apparently it's to encourage people to discreetly ask for help by going to the bar when they're, and they might be experiencing some harassment or something like that, and it's a code, apparently, code phrase aimed at alerting the staff to the cry for help. So they can diffuse the situation or arrange to have that person discreetly escorted out of the premises, that sort of thing. So it's you go up to the staff if you're experiencing some issues and say, can I speak to Angela or something like that? And the staff are supposed to know about it. But so that was an interesting one that I picked up the other day. So the other one was that this particular sign will be displayed in, well, the licensed premises are supposed to be, it's directed towards the OMCGs, the motorcycle gangs.
Oh, okay.
Not to be wearing colours when they come in. And if they are wearing colours, they're supposed to remove them, and some members of the staff have got to have the courage to go and ask them to remove them. Absolutely. So, yes, we had a briefing by Senior Constable Chris Borger from Armidale, came up and gave us a bit of a talk about the situation with the outlawed motorcycle gangs, and that not allowed to get any stranglehold in the community, or at least to establish a foothold, should I say. And but he did tell us that you got a little bit of a possibility of establishing out there in Inverell the mongrels.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but any hint of them starting a clubhouse, it's generally they move very, very quickly. But, yeah. Okay, so that's about all I wanted to bring up to date with.
Councillor, and I apologise, with the liquor record with the meetings, and I haven't been to one for ages, but I mean, do we get, does council staff member attend that?
Rebecca was there the other day.
Okay.
So,
Well, and I'm only trying to help you, councillor,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
please
no.
respect what I'm saying, because, you know, and it only makes us stronger, because if Beck can take some minutes to put in a report to
yeah,
council.
well, the minutes would have been taken, but it was too late to get
Okay.
this into. That's all. I just
Right.
thought I'd bring up to date. with
Well, we
just
might
that.
even get that put into the,
That's right,
in the
yeah,
next month's
good.
meeting.
Yeah,
But thank you for your verbal report, councillor.
thank you. Good.
Righto. Okay, councillor, with that done, I close the meeting. I thank you all very much for your spirited bidding and attendance, and the meeting is ended. In peace and harmony. Thank you. We didn't knock you about too much, Fiona, did we?